All right, so this week we are doing week 2 on spiritual disciplines, and last week we started our spiritual discipline focus on prayer and different forms of prayer. And so I think I'll talk about it later. And again, the book that I'm using is called The Spiritual Disciplines Handbook by Adele Alberg Calhoun. I really recommend it for anybody who might be interested in stuff like this because, I mean, I got it in seminary, but it's easy to use. It's not written for just seminary students or anything like that. So, but it's got easily over 50 different types of, or close to 50 disciplines. So it's really great, and so I'll be using that a lot as we go through. And I think I'm actually doing 6 weeks instead of just the 4 because there's so many different practices.
Nice.
So for those of you who were here last week, does anybody remember what spiritual disciplines are defined as, or what are they?
I don't remember us defining them. I don't remember what we said.
Any guesses? Any guesses?
Like practices that bring us closer to God and strengthen our spirituality.
Via submission.
Maybe. So spiritual disciplines are defined as are there intentional practices, relationships, and experiences that give us the space in our lives to keep company with Christ. Who remembers the types of prayer that we focused on last week? I can name them. There's
meditative.
Breath prayer.
Breath prayer, okay.
Contemplative.
Contemplative, good.
Centering.
Good.
Community or like
Corporate.
Yeah.
Corporate.
Close. It's a C word.
Congregation.
Conversational. Good job, George.
have the 4.
There's the A.
I actually know you have 7 letters.
That's true. So C. That's great.
C's get 3s.
Okay, so what's the breath prayer defined as? Or who can describe what the breath prayer is? We practiced all of these. Breath prayer.
You're breathing, as you breathe in and out, you're thinking.
So breath prayer is you're focusing on your breathing, and the way it does it in here, and you can do it different ways, but is you're focusing on like a name for God or something like that, Abba, or the dated one in here is breath of life, and you breathe in, breathe on me, breathe out. Obviously you're saying those, and so that's the breath prayer focus. What about centering prayer? Who can tell me about the centering prayer?
Is that when you focus on a certain theme?
Certain theme or word, yeah. And you're just centering prayer is they want you to, you're supposed to do it. Start with a minimum of 15 minutes. And work your way into doing more time, just silent reflection and focusing on letting your thoughts wander, and then using that word to bring your thoughts back to Christ and going deeper with that. And then contemplative prayer.
Similar to centering, but without not necessarily having the word, trying to leave yourself open to listen to what God or Christ wants to say.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you're sitting in silence, you're listening, you're letting yourself be open to what Christ wants to tell you, and that kind of thing. And you can still use that centering word to bring your mind back to that openness. And then conversational prayer.
A group setting.
Converse.
Yeah, I had never done that one before, and I really liked it. So conversational prayer is it's in a group setting, and basically you somebody starts, and they start with a topic that's on their heart, and it can be personal, it can be worldly, it can be anything, and then and they'll say a few sentences on that, and then another person will comment on that, or lift up a few words about that, and so on. And I think last week it really flowed because we were able to get into. We started with one topic, and it really flowed into some other topics that were on our hearts, and I thought it flowed really nicely. So I really like that, and I think I want to close out tonight that same way because I thought it was good. So I challenged you to keep with some of these over this week. Was anybody able to do that? 1 day, 2 days, all days?
Tried to do the breath prayer. I think I managed 3 days.
Okay. That's better than I did, so. That's good.
I tried to do the breath prayer too, but each time I did it was a different. Like I just make up something, like remember it all.
Right, well,
I remember you said you posted on Facebook.
I didn't because I had to go.
Oh, well, good. Those 2 days work. So I just kind of make it up, but it was still, no matter what I said, it was still, you could still focus on your breathing. It's one of those things that you don't know you're doing all the time, and it kind of slows down.
And I think that's what it's really meant to do, is to help you focus and slow down. And even, I don't think I mentioned this last week, I think I forgot, but the breath prayer and the centering prayer, you're supposed to do those in a period of time, but then you should be able to come back as you need during the day, come back to your one word or come back to that breath prayer just to recenter you, even if it's not for a long period of time, just for a little bit. So those are the 4 practices we went over last week. For those of you who were able to continue, what was that experience like for you? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Is it something that you would be interested in continuing or exploring more? Like, what was your experience with it?
I really like the centering prayer, and I don't know if I did exactly how you would say, but getting back to what you just said about being able to use that same word to kind of draw you back in, especially like at work and, doing all kinds of other stuff, at times you just think about that same word that you had to start with, and it kind of helps, or at least it helped me. So yeah, I've done that in the past, but I didn't know that it was, a type of prayer.
Right. Cool. Anybody else?
Kind of reminded me how little time I normally take to reflect and just be still and calm.
Yeah, definitely when we were doing stuff last week, I was like, man, this is a long time. So it cut.
We also did 4 in a row last week, 4
Right.
different types, so it was a lot.
And it wasn't that long either. So the idea of you clearly don't sit in silence for 10 minutes very often.
Right.
You really felt.
That's one thing with in seminary on part, we have to do our spiritual formation, which is it's technically a class, but it's more about focusing on spiritual disciplines and taking the time to actually be in prayer and making sure, because in ministry, when you're in ministry, that's one of the first things that get lost because you're focusing on everybody else. And so you don't take that time for yourself, which is, of course, not going to be healthy for your ministry because you're going to get burned out really quick. And so that's what the whole point of spiritual formation. And what my formation leader does is for the first 5 to 10 minutes of our meeting at each retreat, we sit in silence for 10 minutes. Because it's not something that we usually take the time to do, and focus and stuff. And so, it was uncomfortable a little bit at first, but then we all came to really like that because we didn't take that time normally just to sit and do nothing. So, are you going to say something?
Even though I wasn't here last week, I've done something similar. I think I've mentioned that I took a Religions of India class in college, and as part of that class, one day we tried to practice meditation, and meditation is a lot like breath prayer. It's not it may not be focusing on a particular deity or anything like that, but it's mainly trying to focus on the fact that you're breathing and thinking about, letting thoughts just kind of come and go, but it's all about centering yourself on breathing. So it's kind of like whatever that second prayer was. Centering, except the centering thing was your breath. Mm-hmm. So it was like that's what brought you back into your meditation, was the fact that your mind might go everywhere, but you come back to the fact, oh, I'm breathing, and you think about that fact. And what I remember from doing that, we did it for 30 minutes. It was pretty painful, actually. And I mean, it's pretty, and that's not, it's not, not even really in a funny way, but it just kind of reminded me of how hard it is, how little time you make for that, but also how hard it is to do sometimes. Like something as simple as trying to focus your mind and your body on one thing like that for a long period of time is very hard to do. It's very, and even just sitting still. I remember after I sat still like this in a chair for 30 minutes and tried not to move a whole lot and just think about that, you start to tense up in your back and in your neck and just little things like that reminded me of how hard it is to center yourself, period. Even to slow down and not just think about one thing, but also kind of physically too.
Right. I think I will, in the next, I don't remember which week I'm doing it, but we will focus on meditation a little bit. We probably won't do it 30 minutes worth, but but that is something that we are going to talk about. So this week we are continuing with more forms of prayer, and so we are talking about fasting, fixed hour prayer, intercessory prayer, and liturgical prayer. So I'm going to start with fixed hour prayer. I'm going to read a little bit about that. Okay. So fixed hour prayer is the desire that we're supposed to have for a fixed hour prayer is to stop our work and pray throughout the day. Fixed hour prayers call for regular or consistent patterns of attending to God throughout the day. Scriptures that refer to this are 7 times a day I praise you, Psalm 119, 164. One day, Peter and John were going up to the temple at the time of prayer at 3 in the afternoon. So the practice includes interrupting work at set times for prayer, following prayers in liturgy of the hours, following a personal liturgy, or stopping at the top of every hour for prayer. And the benefits of this include turning the heart and mind to God at specific hours of the day and night, growing detached from the all-absorbing compulsiveness of work, integrating being and doing in your daily life, joining the timeless prayer rhythms of the church throughout the ages. So fixed hour prayer is something that has been around for a really, really, really long time. There are monks do 7 times a day. They do night prayer. They do waking up prayers, prayers for the beginning work, giving thanks, prayers in the mid-morning, noonday prayer of commitment, mid-afternoon, evening prayer of stillness, going to sleep prayer of trust. So, we look at this list and we're overwhelmed. That's, how many times do we really stop and pray during the day? Sometimes for me it's 0. That's the reality. We are, we rarely stop to take that time, more than a minute or 2 anyways. So it's kind of interesting to see how far back this kind of prayer goes and everything, and how it is a rhythm for a lot of people. You know, it's how they go about their daily lives. There's something. Okay, so what times, like right now in your life, what times of day do you typically pray? Is there a set time? Or is it just whenever the mood strikes?
It's normally, for me, it's not during work. Breaking up a work day seems like, I mean, it sounds like something that would be nice, but that normally whenever it falls for me, it's either in the morning before I go to work or when I'm laying in my bed about to go to sleep, you know, so that's pretty typical for my times.
I don't know, I just feel like I always pray like while I'm doing things and stuff, so maybe not like sitting down and being like, okay, I'm praying, but like in the middle of things I need to, so it's never a set time, ever. I don't feel like, I never feel like I specifically think, oh, it's all the while I'm praying unless I'm in a church service.
Right. I find I do it, and it's never a set time, but I do it at night, like before I go to sleep, and will sometimes fall asleep in prayer, which I kind of love. But also when I'm driving, because that's like my.
Don't fall asleep.
No, that's my like that. Driving is like my introverted, like happy place. Put on some music and that kind of thing, and that's why I don't mind driving from Arkansas, you guys.
We're gonna kill her prayer life now. She moves out here.
That's why she's learning
No
all
more
that.
prayer.
Yeah, precisely.
That's what it means.
So how do you feel about using memorized prayers, though, prayers of others? Like, do you typically pray on your own, or are there memorized prayers other than, obviously Lord's Prayer? But is there anything else that you typically would use? And this we'll kind of go more into this in the liturgical prayer, but
Like blessing meals. A lot of times, even if you change some of the wording of it, it's usually the same, basic thought process.
Right.
Bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies to your holy service.
Yeah.
My dad says the same prayer at dinner, anytime, the same. Even uses the word "the," like to refer to, like God, the THEE, and he would never ever use that word. So he apparently, just to that point, I think that's it's not liturgical, I guess, but it's like I feel like with meals, a lot of times there's a memorized prayer that's said. There's also, with me, I used to do memorized prayers, and I don't pray a whole lot, but I used to do those a lot more when I was younger. I remember, praying the Lord's Prayer, in the shower. I don't know why, but that's what I would say. But then as I got older, I would not necessarily say a script prayer and just speak more from, more like talk.
Right.
So, I don't know, it's changed for me over time, I guess.
Sometimes for me, when I'm doing memorized prayers, especially during church service, I've been Methodist all my life, so you do the same prayer over and over and over. So you catch yourself just kind of saying the words and not really analyzing them. So I really try to focus and analyze what I'm saying. No, do I actually mean this today? And stuff like that. Because sometimes you're just in a service, you're just
Absolutely.
I got it. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to say, George's family does the same prayer before every meal, and I cannot. It's like one line long. I cannot remember it for the life of me. And it always makes me feel so awkward because part of me spends half the time just trying to remember this one line, and then it's over, and then you feel awkward because everyone else is saying about you, and it's are you trying to protest, not pray? And sometimes I try to just mumble, but everyone knows you're mumbling. So it's just, and I don't know why I can't learn this one sentence, but it makes it interesting. It's something that they say, even if it's repetitive, I'm maybe I've just never internalized it the same way as other prayers.
We would say it at every meal growing up. I guess at some point I thought that my parents only did it for us, so we would know something, like have something to say. But my mother still does it, whether we're there or not.
Mhm.
So that's something that I kind of like stopped saying it myself because I thought it was more of a
Teaching moment or something?
no, it's along the same lines that it's something that you don't really think about, and so I didn't like that, but clearly it still has some meaning.
Right.
But,
And this probably falls into the liturgical prayer thing, but just because we're on the topic, I think for those of you who were there Sunday, we had a different minister who was the husband of our organist preach, and he read this thing from a book, and the one like at the end of the sermon, and the one thing that stuck out to me was it kind of mentioned the fact that we read or we say like these memorized sayings or whatever, prayers, etc. And it says it said in the book basically, and I'm paraphrasing that, a lot of the times we think of that as just like liturgical blah blah blah, but really it's that repetitiveness that somehow enables spontaneity. So it's almost like by just repeating those things,
Mhm.
it leaves the door. The words were like it leaves the door open for God to speak, or it can. And so like maybe 9 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 100, it's just repetitive to you. But then there's that one time when having that door open like that, something might hit you and speak to you, and like whatever you're saying, or those little prayers and stuff. So I thought that was a really nice, and I think it's true. I think it's a good point about that. Just while we were on the topic, like I really liked hearing that word on Sunday. So
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to skip around. I think since we're already talking about liturgy somewhat, we'll go into liturgical next. But so I liked what they've in this book. They've got different spiritual exercises for you to do with each prayer, and one of the challenges that I'm going to put for us this week is to add one additional prayer time to your day, whether you already pray at night or whenever, but add one fixed prayer and set a reminder on your phone if you need to. Set an alarm, do whatever you need to do to make that happen. But that's one of the challenges that this week that I'm going to ask you guys to do, and I will do it myself too. I didn't this week, like I should have. But one of the things that they did talk about with the fixed hour prayer that I kind of liked, and it's very relevant for me, is that it says when you wake up in the middle of the night, don't fight with yourself why you are awake. Which I know I do that. I just get angry that I'm awake because I want to go back to sleep. But it says to enter into vigils, lean deeply into God, and simply pray for the things that come to mind. Don't hurry. Attend to God as David did in the watches of the night. And that's something for me personally. I think I really need to. All of us are Methodists now. Did you guys grow up Methodist? You did?
Yes.
Yeah.
we don't really have
Denomination.
Methodists in
Okay.
Australia anymore. They combined with the Presbyterians and
Okay.
the Uniting Church of Australia,
Okay.
and then some Presbyterians broke away. So I grew up in the Uniting Church, but my mother was a Lutheran. I went to Catholic schools.
Okay. So you know liturgy. That's basically what I was getting at. Huh? So being a part of this tradition, we obviously, especially, I think all of us have been in it for most of our lives, if not all of our lives. So we know the Wesleyan tradition and the liturgy and the established patterns of written prayers. Readings, and that's the liturgical prayer is a written or memorized prayer that serves as a framework for individual or corporate worship and devotion. Obviously, most well-known prayer that everybody knows, Lord's Prayer, so what liturgy really allows us to do, instead of us leading ourselves in prayer, we are allowing ourselves to be led in prayer by someone or something else. By another prayer, praying prayers written by others, praying or singing scripture as a part of worship, praying prayers of the church that have come down to us from the past, and praying the prayers that are written for different seasons of the church year. Those are all examples of liturgy. And so what liturgical prayer allows us to do is, like I said, be led in prayer rather than leading ourselves in prayer, detaching from our own prayer agenda and to-do list for God, entering into God's heart for the world as found in the Liturgy of the Hours, allowing the prayers of others to become your own when your heart feels empty. And allowing the repetitive nature of liturgy to shape your life. I think this is also really powerful in liturgy, is that, we're not just joining with just us in this room. Most of our liturgical prayers, we're joining with other believers all over the world. It's not just us in this room. It's all of our brothers and sisters in Christ, which is pretty powerful. And also, it's also great for staying in dialogue with God when our own prayers run dry. Our own spontaneous prayers, we lose what we need to say. We already talked about it a lot. How do you feel about liturgy? I know, Carly, you mentioned that sometimes with liturgy you just get you go through it, but what impact does it have on you? But any other thoughts? Perhaps you spoke that a little bit too, but
does liturgy mean you have to say it together, like you're all saying?
Well, or not necessarily together. A lot of it is done together, but it's a prayer that's already been written for you.
Because one thing I really struggle with, that I don't understand how everyone else seems to be able to do this but me, is like the cadence we use in church. Like everyone knows exactly when to pause, and when there's no comma, I pause at the comma. Like I don't get it, and I'm really confused, and it's like, just for me, it's like, wow, this is this cult that everyone knows, and I'm not part of it, and I don't understand, but I can't say it. And I just have to say it with what makes sense to me, otherwise I have no idea what I'm saying.
It's okay. I still mess up on Communion Sundays. Some of the stuff we sing is a different, like the music is different from Hunter and Tal Methodist. It's the same word. And so like I have to like think of where I am.
Yeah, no, that is interesting when you go from church to church and it's just
a tiny bit different.
Little bit different.
So I don't know, I guess I can't read it and understand what I'm saying if I do it with everyone else. Like
right, no, I totally get
although
that.
I still don't understand how they know, like, okay, it's not a forward thing, Paul. I've been trying to be all, mathematical about this, but there's no pattern.
Don't try to.
I don't get it. Like, everyone just knows. Like, they're all running out of breath at the same time or something. And I'm left out.
It's just, I think
because
it's
I'm
just,
always like, okay.
it's the whole sense of, everybody's been doing it that way for, umpteen years.
That's why whenever he changes a prayer, it throws everybody.
It's awesome.
Because they all just keep going on their thing, and then all of a sudden it's not really a prayer, but like in Emmanuel, he'll change up the response to the word, which is normally the Apostles' Creed.
Right.
But then he'll make it something different. If anything starts, "Our Father who art in heaven,"
Yes.
or not, excuse me, we believe, or whatever.
I believe in God.
Yeah.
Father,
If it starts like that, man, you're gonna hear 12 people, 13 people, keep going. Then they're like, oh, you know, like we're not reading that, or you know. So I mean, to that point, it is kind of hard. And I think that's some of the things that I know personally. A few of our ministers are conscious of. They like try to, you know, I've heard one of them say before, we say that just so fast. We just slow it down.
Yeah.
You know, like really. So, but there is a cadence. It seems
Right.
like.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to describe it, but it does
I think
exist.
cadence is the perfect word for it.
Yeah.
Because that is, you know, how we.
I don't think anyone reads that way. Like, I don't think anyone's
No.
reading it. The way,
Yeah, but yeah, I
there's
mean,
something different about
we
what I'm
say it in
doing.
the cadence. Do we actually take it in and process it?
We also say it monotone, so you know,
yeah,
like
that's
that's up. That would be that.
That's also a weird environment. We're like happy to
Yeah.
It's like, can we not say it in a way that we would normally and be able to say it in a group? It's kind of interesting thinking about that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But I'll let you know let me know if you have any tricks in your trade. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I feel so bad for going around.
But even in that moment, it's like whatever I heard, what he said, what he read from on Sunday, really kind of transformed. I mean, like it just kind of woke me up to it. Like even in that moment for you, the presence of that liturgy, you may read it 99 times out of 100 in one cadence. But if you read it in a different cadence, all of a sudden it makes you think about what you're saying. It makes you think about, you know, it leaves kind of that door open to allow you to maybe think about what you're saying more, or to believe more what you're saying, or something like that. Which, you know, like that was just a really powerful statement to me because, you know, it's just, I think it's very true, like I said. But I don't. And another thing that's cool too is not just prayer liturgy, but just other, you know, like it's nice to. You mentioned talking about how it connects you back, like, or it connects you to the fellowship of believers, but also like back in time and back to all those people. And then when you read the liturgy, and I mean, you can, you know, sit there and be like, it's not that big of a deal. But thinking about the fact that we're still repeating the words that Jesus said so long ago, you know, in that moment is kind of connecting you all the way back to that. So I mean, it's another nice thing about liturgy.
Yeah, I do like the tradition of it. I wasn't sure. I had a friend in college at Lambeth, who was just like, she hated the responsive readings because she's like, nobody's paying attention to it. Doesn't mean anything. They're just saying the words. And I kind of resonated with that a little bit. But then, I guess over the last few years, I've had some friends that just really love liturgy, and so I've kind of taken, you know, into perspective what they love about it, and a lot of that is the tradition of it, and you know, there's a lot to be said for that.
And just one more thing, I think it's to that other point you made. It kind of speaks for you when you don't know what else to say. Like, let me tell you, if you got up in front of a group of people and you asked them to pray about what they really wanted to pray about out loud, that's not happening. At least in our tradition. You know, I know that there's some traditions where people would cry out things that, you know, are on their heart or whatever, but especially in like a tradition like ours, that's just not going to happen. If you tell people to really pray about something that's on their heart about something, they'll just sit there in silence because they don't want to say anything. But if you have a liturgical prayer, that's something that they'll say, and you know it might mean something different to them based on their experiences, but they're using that as a tool to kind of pray what's really inside or something. So
yeah, absolutely. With that said, that's a perfect segue. So I forgot to make copies, and I posted it on Facebook in the Emmanuel Young Adults group. If you guys want to go. I was gonna lead you guys in the Wesleyan Covenant prayer, and
3 words per beat.
Oh no, we had to say it out loud.
No, I'm just kidding.
yes, we're reading it with each
You're
other.
gonna see my awkwardness.
I can't wait.
Try my best, but you better pause if there's a comma.
I will. No commas. though.
Be ready. You want to
That's the only time I know.
It's right here.
Oh wait, I
So this is the Wesleyan Covenant prayer, and this is a modernized version, obviously. I personally, this is one of my favorite liturgical prayers. This is what I say quite a bit. I have a poster of it for my office and at home and everything. So, Amy, are you a part of the Emmanuel group?
Everything is that you're saying keeps getting warbled, so I'm trying to but I have it on here. Can you understand?
Okay, awesome. A little bit.
Sorry for the warble.
I was the same way.
We're getting some warble from your end too. I don't know what's going on.
So which thing we click on?
It should.
Oh, it's the post.
It's just a post, yeah, that I have there. So now everybody's ready.
Do you have this memorized, Jana?
Poor Gina doesn't have a phone.
Yes, yeah.
I can pull up. Okay, so to start. I'm no
longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Place me with whom you will. Put me to doing. Put me to suffering. Let me be put to work for you, or set aside for you. Praise for you, or criticize for you. Let me be full. Let me be empty. Let me have all things. Let me have nothing. I freely and fully surrender all things to your open service. And now, O glorious and blessed God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, you are mine, and I am yours. So be it. And the covenant which I have made on earth, let it be made also in heaven. Amen.
Well, so that's one of my favorites that I say a lot. It's one that, like we said, when I don't know what to say, it's one that I will go into. I told you guys last week with the breath prayer, I will use that first line, and I will say that with the breath prayer. So now, I'm going to go back to my notes. Okay. So now we're going to talk about fasting. Have any of you guys ever done that? I mean, other than for 30-hour famine or something like that, have you ever fasted regularly or anything like that? What about a media fast?
A who?
A media fast.
Media fast.
Yeah. Fast from media?
Fast from media. You go without your phone, you go without TV, music, all of that, technology,
I did that one time. When I was in the Boy Scouts, we went on a wilderness survival trek, and it was in northeast New Mexico, so kind of the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and we didn't have any kind of technology whatsoever, nothing. I mean, we had to take our own food. We had 65-pound backpacks that we had to, hike with, and carry all of our cooking gear and all that. So I mean, it was kind of interesting. I mean, to be disconnected like that from the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. It was just the only thing you knew is what everybody in your trek or your group was, everything that was happening within our little group. We didn't know anything about anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to do that when we had our boat. I was in middle school, so I don't really, you're on
before technology.
They didn't have Facebook and Twitter back then, Carl.
Or fun.
Yeah, I got a phone.
They didn't have that Twitter.
Well, George and me on our honeymoon, we were without technology. But it was all...
3-4 days.
Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of at a time that, you're at a new place, you kind of want to share it with others to know, what's going on, and they're all wondering. But at the same time, for those that know me, I walk pretty slow, and so... when we're doing a hike, but it was really just George and me, because George would stay back with me, but I guess I just meant a conversation how you kind of say you know what everyone else shares, as well as you hear oh, this is coming up, or oh, I just went down there. There wasn't many people going the other direction, but every once in a while there is someone that can't make it or something, and they give you information. No, something's coming up, or they'll be like, you're almost there, or a cool site's coming up, or it was just interesting that was my only communication.
Right.
It was like word of mouth, but only for that day event, nothing more long term. Just like, come on, walk that way, you're almost there, Or turn back now. There's still time.
Okay, so the desire behind fasting is to let go of an appetite in order to seek God on matters of deep concern for others, for ourselves, and for the world. A fast is the self-denial of normal necessities in order to intentionally attend to God in prayer. Bringing attachments and cravings to the surface opens a place for prayer. The physical awareness of emptiness is the reminder to turn to Christ, who alone can satisfy. I can't talk. So what this practice includes, I think when we usually think of it, we think of fasting from food, or not doing food, but it means we're fasting from food, drink, shopping, desserts.
Something.
Are we practicing this one?
Obviously not.
Are you not?
Are you sure about
Okay.
Jana's fasting from meat.
that? Yes. For about a year now. Over a year now. Okay, so it traditionally we think of it as abstaining from food and that kind of thing. It also, already talked about, includes abstaining from media, TV, radio, music, email, cell phones, and computer games, to allow space for listening. Abstaining from habits or comforts, elevators, reading, or sports, in order to give God undivided attention. Observing fast days and seasons of the church year. Addressing excessive attachments or appetites and the entitlements behind them.
When you read more about the history of people fasting, has it usually been food, and now more recently it's more also media, or?
I think so. Fasting has, been part of the Judeo-Christian tradition for millennia. Like, the Bible talks about it quite a bit, actually. I've only got a couple of verses. One of them is Matthew 6:16-18. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show men they are fasting. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to men that you are fasting, but only to your Father, who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And I think, I don't remember where I read this or heard. I talked about fasting not long ago, and that was one of the focuses is fast, but don't tell the world you're fasting. It's not, you're not trying to bring attention to yourself or anything like that. You're doing it for your own personal benefit. And relationship with Christ. So Old Testament saints fasted at times of mourning and national repentance. They fasted when they needed strength or mercy to persevere, and when they wanted a word from God. You can find that in Samuel, and Nehemiah, and Esther. Fasting was a normal practice.
Then before we start this thing.
No, you're good. We're not fasting tonight.
Well,
We're just talking about it. So fasting was a normal practice for Jews of Jesus' day. Jesus began his ministry with a 40-day fast. He also practiced fasting for healings and to overcome temptation. The New Testament church sometimes fasted when it sought God's will and needed the grace and strength to remain faithful to God's word. There were also fast times linked to times of worship. So there are obviously a lot of examples in fasting, and it's not just Christianity; it's other religions as well. I know practice fasting as well. One thing I underlined this. I want to make sure I read it. Fasting exposes how we try to keep empty hunger at bay and gain a sense of well-being by devouring creature comforts. Through self-denial, we begin to recognize what controls us. I think that's very true, especially in today, like today with media and having a cell phone at our tips that has games and Facebook and all sorts of distractions on it. I think, if I leave it somewhere, if it's, in another room and I can't, I start to fidget and, I'm like, it's sad that I'm addicted to my cell phone. Like, the plain truth. Like, and I think that's the case for a lot of us, and it's sad.
I have some students in my class that tell me that they can't put it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that I didn't handle that. It's like something I teach you and how to be a professor.
Yeah.
It's just like when we're outside though and it's really dark and then you see this bright light.
You got a flashlight in your pocket, it's ready.
You can really tell who has a phone at, and you're just like, I'm sorry, I'm addicted to it. Like it's an okay excuse, it's accepted in today society.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's weird though? I was thinking about this the other day. I agree that fasting is a good thing. It's just I had this thought the other day regarding media. While when we were at James's house on Sunday, I thought to myself, I never once thought about my cell phone because I realized that everybody I would actually contact was mostly in the room.
Right.
And so that was an interesting, just now it's kind of made me think about, what is behind people's addictions to technology.
Right.
Some people, I don't know if it's and I'm addicted to other things than besides, I need to hear what somebody's doing, but they're here in this room. I mean, obviously, if I look at Twitter or stuff like that, then that's an addiction to that. But, it kind of made me think that sometimes maybe there's even a good reason, I guess, to be concerned about that. I don't know. It just made me think about that just now. That almost like having that kind of erase that desire for my technology.
Right.
Having or a lot of people that I normally would communicate with there,
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like sometimes our addictions are, just a longing for community. We're trying to connect any way we possibly can, and the easiest way to communicate with somebody these days is via text or Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Right.
So yeah,
I think
that's
it's
a good
also
point.
For me. I think sometimes it's a way to fill a gap, not just like when you're waiting at the doctor's office or something like that, but just. Yes, I'm an introvert, but I live by myself and I don't have a lot of people to talk to. So I get out my phone and play a game or something like that sometimes when I'm not working and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. But I like the way it says through self-denial we begin to recognize what controls us. And so when we're fasting, we start to recognize the things in our lives that that are more important than they should be, I think. So when you feel empty or restless, what do you use to try and fill the emptiness? That makes sense.
Empty or restless for a specific thing.
Yeah,
Like you were saying, like community, or
Mm-hmm.
is that what you mean? Like, because you're fasting, you feel empty for that specific.
Yeah. Well, even when you're not fasting, is there something that there's a gap that's not filled? Like, is there something that you long for, and how do you fill it? Like. And you don't have to answer that. That's just a question for thought.
I mean, for me, I'm going to say wrestling. I know I use that a lot, but a lot of time, I mean, I know sometimes that it's a form of escape for me if I feel, like I get involved. I mean, I think that's a lot. Same with me, movies, music, etc. Well, maybe not music, because for me, music makes me think more about myself than kind of escaping. But like movies and TV shows and things, like for me, are one avenue where I'm like, I don't feel so good today, but man, I got something stupid to watch tonight, so I don't have to think about that.
Right.
Or like that's one of those things for me, I guess. Even though I like it anyway.
Right.
But it's
But
another.
it's still,
it's something else that gets me, fills a gap, as you would say, or is a way of dealing with that.
Yeah, I think like escaping, like if you're really frustrated or something, either just like check out and watch TV like that, or like running, because sometimes if I'm like running and I'm just like me and nobody else, and I'm listening to music and like, you get all your frustrations out and you're not thinking about stuff, or you focus on one thing while you're running.
So what's your attitude towards fasting right now? Like, what? I mean, I don't think any of us have really fasted other than something like 30-hour famine. But what's your attitude towards it when you hear people are fasting for different reasons or from different things?
I think it's admirable.
You're doing it for the right reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You sign up for and stuff like that. And, in that moment, you need to be doing that, or is it just because you signed up for it, or is it a communal thing? Like, or sometimes you get into something, even like a prayer practice or something that's not doing what it could be doing for you, and you should be doing something else, to get closer to God. So I think, like, you need to make sure that it's doing its purpose.
I think it sounds scary when it's something like food that, you have to live. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to eat as much as you do or something, but just something that makes you feel like you want to make sure you're doing it properly to not throw off other parts of your day, I think some other things like media might make that easier, but might make it harder. Like, in certain people's jobs, can they just, show up and just say, I can't use a computer today? Like, what?
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And just like, it's kind of interesting to think about.
I think, too, I agree. I think it's admirable whenever I hear it. But then when I think, too, I feel like fasting is also used as a way to try to make you grateful for something you already have. That's not God, necessarily.
Right, yeah.
Like, I feel like the purpose, even though it's good, I think it's a good thing, but thinking about whenever you mentioned 30-hour famine, I think the purpose of 30-hour famine is not to fast so that you learn that it makes you closer to God necessarily, but it makes you realize how grateful you are that you have food in the midst of this is what people deal with who don't have this food. They have to feel this pain daily, if not, all the time. And so, not that that's not something, a concern that God cares about, or a matter that's on God's heart is the fact that people are starving, because it is. But it's almost like, I feel like it's used in different ways,
right?
Which are all maybe good, but I'm not really sure what my point was with that, except the fact that I think that there's multiple ways, I guess, you can fast that maybe is less about self-reflection, as you say. Like fasting is about realizing the things that hold you back, the things that control you. There's a fasting for that, but then there's also a fasting for world awareness or something, or awareness of things. But I guess I think both are good.
Mhm.
It's just different.
Yeah. So this, I mean, fasting is seen by a lot of people as a spiritual discipline. A lot of people will do this regularly, you know, whether it's once a week or whether it's just like one meal a week. You know, it's you know, like we talked, it's supposed to help you bring your center back to Christ, and you know, whatever reason you're doing it for. And they suggest in here with spiritual exercises is to, if you are, you know, interested in trying it and seeing if you want to make it a regular thing, start with one meal a week. Start slow, especially if you're, you know, your body's not used to fasting. Do it a little bit at a time. Start slowly. So they've got a whole list of guidelines if you want to get started with that. So that's my other challenge this week is I haven't decided which day. It might be Saturday. I'm gonna try and do a media fast on Saturday. I'm gonna turn off my phone, and I'll probably go spend some time outside. Like that's where I can get away and just focus on God. You know, even if we wanted to do something together, be in community with one another, but all of our phones are off, or if you wanted to do it during the week, I know most of us use computers for work, but you know, even if it's just like using computers for work only, and you know, not for entertainment purposes and that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody wants to join me in trying to do one day this week. Please do. I'm looking forward to it. I think, you know, it's nice when I go to Lakeshore and I don't have a signal sometimes, because I can just leave my phone and I don't worry about it because I'm there to spend time with some awesome people that I'm with, and not worry about that kind of thing. So, so 2 challenges for this week. Add another time of prayer to your day, a fixed hour, something that you do every day, and then think about, pray about doing a media fast, or I mean, do a food fast too if you want. Like just one of the two. You know, that's obviously you don't have to do that. I think half of us did, not even half of us did what we were supposed to do last week, myself included. But just consider it. I think it'd be interesting to see. I know it's hard, especially just doing it for the first time. I think with a lot of these things, you need to get into a rhythm of doing it regularly before you really fully experience what it's supposed to give you. But
this also gives us an outlet to try it.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times you just something. Oh, I'll do that someday. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, why not today?
Yeah.
Everyone else will do it.
Yeah. So the last one that I'm gonna do is intercessory prayer. And this one we'll close this out with a little exercise with the Lord's Prayer. So intercessory prayer is probably, I guess, you know, this might not be what we call it all the time, but it's probably what we're more familiar with. And it is to turn our concerns and our worries into prayer, to enter God's heart for the world and then pray from there. Intercessory prayers invites us into God's care and concern for us, our families and friends, and the entire world. No concern is too trivial for God to receive with loving attention. Intercession is not a means of manipulating heaven into doing our will. Rather, it is a way we become aware of God's prayer for a person and join in that intercession. I'm going to read all these scriptures because I like them a lot. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints in accordance with God's will. Romans 8:27. Philippians 4:6. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers. Let God know your concerns. Ephesians 6:18. In the same way, prayer is essential in this ongoing warfare. Pray hard and long. Pray for your brothers and sisters. Keep your eyes open. Keep each other's spirits up so that no one falls behind or drops out. And so this includes going to prayer meetings, small group prayer, contributing to prayer lists and prayer chains, participating in healing prayer, praying for the world, for peace, for God's kingdom to come, and praying for personal concerns and tasks, transactions, and relationships, which is, I think, what most of us are most familiar with. That's what we do most. I know it's almost 9:30, but so just a couple of things, a couple of paragraphs I wanted to read that it says, intercession is one of the ways God invites us into the heart of the Trinity. As we keep company with Jesus through intercession, we begin to see the world and the people in it from his perspective and heart. Increasingly, we long for the same things he longs for. The Holy Spirit guides our intercessions so that they sound more and more like Jesus' own intercessions for this world. Your kingdom come, your will be done. At times, our trust wavers, and we don't know how to pray. Can't find words to pray, and are too distressed to pray. At those moments, we have the assurance that God prays. The Holy Spirit, who inhabits our being, personally tutors us in praying, and even interprets for us when we are unable to articulate our hearts to God. The Spirit intercedes with, quote, groans that words cannot express, and that's Romans 26. Furthermore, Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding for us as well. We are never left alone. God is with us and praying for us. So, what do your requests to God reveal about your priorities, goals, and desires and heart? What does that reveal about you?
Well, I think you pray out the things that you're worried about and they're really simple to you. It's just, what you think about all the time and you pray out.
I guess the way you pray also reveals how you expect God to work in your life. Whether you're asking for, please magically give me this thing I've always wanted, or I guess as a little kid you probably start to pray that way, and then you realize, well, maybe it doesn't work that way, and you still are asking for things or praying about things you want to happen, but doing it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. If God asked you to pray for something specifically, what do you think he would ask you to pray for? You don't have to answer that out loud, but just something to think about. Things that, might be. I think that things that are important to us are probably there, and they're probably important on our hearts because God has placed them there on our hearts. Just from my own experience, I feel like that's a lot of the things that I'm passionate about. I think it's because God's placed that on my heart, and so I think that's what God wants from me at that point in time. Okay.
I feel like for me, I always get stuck in like a thing where anytime I think about, I guess, intercessory prayer, I always feel like I'm very self-centered when I pray about things, and I don't know. You say you believe that sometimes that things that you're very passionate about are on your heart for a reason. But like for me, I never know like if I'm just praying too much about myself or trying, not like stupid stuff like let me get an A on this test or but like things that I'm just personally like need help with, as opposed to like praying for others. Or I almost feel like if I try to do an intercessory prayer for someone else, it almost doesn't feel as genuine. Even though I care about the person, it's like a lot of times my most genuine prayers are whenever I'm praying for me. and it kind of makes me think of what you said, kind of how you pray reveals how you feel, like how you expect God to act in your life. Like, is, like do I pray those prayers a lot, or am I most genuine about those self prayers, because I believe that there is something I'm supposed to do that God's leading me to do, and I need help finding that, and that's how I expect that to happen. Or if I'm just part of this world, and it's really about others, and that I should find my place in that, or is it about both, or kind of. So I always have a struggle with intercessory prayer, just because I always feel like I should be more genuine towards something else that I'm praying about than myself. But most of the time, it ends up being the other way around.
Right. No, I completely agree.
Oh, sorry. Like, I feel like at the same time, like, you can be worried and concerned about someone else's problems and be praying for it and stuff, but you're really the only person that knows everything that you're struggling with. And like sometimes that's why prayers about yourself are more emotional when you focus more on them, because you're the one that knows everything, and maybe God's the only person that you feel like you're talking to about it. So I get what you're saying. Like sometimes you're praying and you're like, well, I just spent half the time talking about myself and my problems, but maybe that's because that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I feel that way too. I think sometimes. I feel that.
Yes, you are wrong.
The mood lighting.
No, I mean, there are a lot of times it's like I feel like I'm being selfish. I'm like you were saying, Travis, like I'm here. I am praying for. We've got so much crap going on in this world, and my friend over here has it so much worse than I do. But yeah, I'm focused on myself, and so I get that. But I also get what you're saying too. Is like a lot of times we don't have those people that we're completely open and honest with, that know every detail about our lives and what's going on in our mind and heart, and that's when we do have to talk to God about those things. So
I guess in a different wording, sometimes whenever I'm praying, I don't know if my heart's in the right place or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like whenever you mentioned there's somebody that's a lot worse off than me that I care about, why am I, like, should my heart be more with them or with me, or is my heart where it should be? Or like for me, that's where like I'm either right where God wants me to be, or I'm not. It's kind of like, and there's no way of really knowing except for how you feel, and a lot of times,
right,
it's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lead us in an intercessory prayer, but it's so we're going to use the Lord's Prayer as a pattern. And so I'll start and I'll just say one line of the Lord's Prayer and then give you instructions on how to pray, and we'll do that for a minute or two and go from there. So, all right, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Spend some time thanking God for his fatherly love and attention. Ponder who he is and adore his majesty, holiness, sovereignty, goodness, and beauty. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Turn your intercession to God's purposes in the world. Where are you trying to bring in your kingdom rather than putting your efforts toward God's kingdom agenda? Confess where God's priorities have been replaced with your own. Consider what God's kingdom agenda might be in your relationships and in the world. Pray for these things. What might partnering with God around His will look like? Give us this day our daily bread. Pray for your needs and those whose lives are closely linked with your own. Pray for those who are in danger, suffering, and in places of decision-making or costly love. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Confess your grudges, bitterness, and oversensitivity. Dwell at the foot of the cross. Thank God for what it is like to be forgiven. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. As you look ahead into your day, notice the tasks and transactions ahead of you. Where might you get off track? Become aware of the ways you may be tempted to spin the truth. Manage your image. Live out your false self. Lose patience or envy another. Pray for the Spirit to work in you to change you. Ask for protection and courage for the day. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. End your time of intercession with prayers of trust in God's goodness and His redemptive plan. Amen. Okay. Do you guys want to close out with a conversational prayer like we did last week? Or not? It's like 20 till 10, so we were late, but.
I've never experienced it before, so
Okay.
I cannot participate.
As in, I can participate. I mean, I have no input. I have no input as in to how this is.
Okay. We can keep it short. We don't have to do it long unless the Spirit leads us. So Travis and Amy, you guys finished the conversational prayer. What it is basically someone starts it with whatever topic is on their heart, whether it's personal, whether it's worldly, whether, whatever it might be. And then another person will, you can say a few sentences about it, and then another person will pray over that or speak over that. We didn't close last week we didn't close our eyes, and we just spoke naturally as a conversation. And it, so and it ended up flowing really nicely. And we covered a few different topics, so it was really cool. So, and then once it gets quiet, I'm gonna let somebody else start. I'm gonna start this week.
Did you start last week?
I just did start last week.
Okay. Dear God, thank you for us being here and being able to worship you. Please be with everybody and the students that we make this week or things that are on our minds to seek you in our decisions and for your guidance.
I just pray for all the unrest in Iraq and Syria and in the Ukraine between them and Russia. My prayer is for them to have conversation, have dialogue, that they can come to a peaceful agreement and end the conflicts and everything that divides them.
And I hope that events like the Soccer World Cup, as contrived and as over the top as it can be, can help lead those kind of conversations and bring people together where they might have come together in antagonism rather than over something that they can enjoy and celebrate.
Something that I've been thinking about a lot is how thankful I am for like this group of people. While I don't expect everybody's birthday to be like the past two that we've celebrated to be.
Oh, no, I'm excited.
I think the bigger thing is I've been, I guess, blessed by knowing that people in our group care about each other, whether or not it's coming together to do something for somebody's birthday or just in general. That was just an outward sign of that to me, seeing the past couple of birthdays. And like I said, that's not something that can always happen all the time, but I think that care for one another is something that I've seen lately from our group towards each other. So thankful for that.
I really like kind of an opposite way of saying of how we can get together and not do something. Like you just get together. It's something I'm really struggling with at my colleagues at work. They've never been over to my house, and sometimes I'll be talking and I'll say my friends. And, you know, and my friends took me there or something, and I'm thinking, well, you're my friend too. You just weren't on that list, and I don't know why I did something with them instead of you. And, you know, they've been very inviting, but, you know, they've never been over my house. I don't know if it's, I'm like, well, you're a parent, how do I, like, say you come over? I don't know what that means, and babysitters and all that, and they live so far away. And, you know, all those little things where I feel like with us, it doesn't matter. It's just like, because we're such a group, it's like whoever can come for whatever the reason, or even if it's just to hang out, just whoever shows up. It's not as much like the same people need to be the exact same. I think maybe it's just a smaller group where there's 5 of us in my department. One of us hang out. Maybe we all feel have to be there and be available to hang out. Whereas with this group, it's just like, if you're available, that'd be great to see you.
You know, kind of funny when we were getting stuff, like, I was making food or something, like, my mom was in the kitchen, and she was like, oh, we're so family, aren't you? It was just kind of funny how she said it.
Something.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, you guys know I don't have family here. Like, there are a few friends here and there that are, I don't think I've seen any of them since other than outside of CYMT. Like, I don't have any other, I mean, you guys are my family here, so I completely have been blessed by everybody as a part of this group, for sure. And I am always thankful and always, that's why it was so hard for me to join the Memphis Women's Chorale, because I'm like, I'm going to miss trivia or most of trivia on Thursday night. Come on. Sucks.
That's why I don't teach on Thursday.
Yeah.
It's a bad reason. Like, I'm busy.
There's worse reasons. You could be like, that could be your like designated, you know, cocaine snorting day. So I'd rather you not be doing
That's
that.
Friday.
But just add on to what you were saying. Maybe we need a prayer for balance. And not just with, you know, friend groups or whatever, but a balance for our lives in general, and just making sure that we are, you know, not absorbed with just work and church and going with all the motion, going with the motions, but making sure that we have balance and have rest and Sabbath and time with each other, just to be with each other and support and hang out and just.
Yeah, I think the other thing, like, I pray for is like confidence of, like, I'm great at hanging out with people my age that don't have children, that are free on the spur of the moment, you know, things like this. And I'm so scared to just hang out with. I don't know how to get that started. I haven't done that before. How do they view me? How do I view them? Is it professional? Is it friend? Is it both? You know, it's really diving to a world I don't know.
Right.
Well, I would encourage you to come on Sunday mornings and to Sunday school.
To the other people.
Well, I mean, I say that because they fit that description. I mean, if you're looking for a way to get better at that or to get more comfortable around that age group, most of the people in this group are married and have kids, and so they lead very different lives than we do. I mean, y'all are married, but you don't have kids, and so it's a different dynamic. But you know, just on to your point, it's a safe, kind of easy way to get better at that interaction.
And all the people said.
Amen. Ani Anami.
All right, so next week, I think we're looking at forms of worship. Yeah, we're going to go with that. We're gonna look.
Interpretive dance.
Forms of worship, or we're going to look at personal. I think we're following me. We're gonna focus on opening ourselves to God in different practices. With that, like journaling